This was a story that I heard from my family when I went to Thailand to visit them last year. For context, my mom along with my stepdad and stepbrother moved to Phuket in 2018, and they first settled in an area near Kamala, where the tragic 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami took many lives of locals and tourists. The story goes that my stepdad and stepbrother was on a business trip in China and had left for a month. My mom fell sick before they came back, and since Phuket is hot, she likes to leave the windows open with the curtains blowing with the breeze in her apartment, which was a few floors high and had a view of the beach. One night while she was sick, it was around 2 a.m. in the morning, and she felt a presence behind her while she was sleeping, and then she felt a tall male with Western cologne on, and he slowly got on the bed with his knees first, hugged her from behind while changing from a kneeling position to laying down. She told me that she remembered feeling that this man was dripping in seawater and had hairy arms and chest. She was too scared to move. I told her that she must have been dreaming since I didn't believe in ghosts, but she told me that she woke up the next morning with the other side of the bed all wet and the cologne smell was still around. What spooked me the most was that when my stepdad and brother came back, my little stepbrother, who was 3 and barely knew a few words back then, pointed at a corner of the wall and said, "Mama, there's a ghost." I thought she was joking, but when I looked at my stepdad, he said it was true with a scared face. They have since moved after that and never experienced anything like that again. But Mom has had a few experiences with the paranormal. When my grandma passed away from cancer, she was traumatized and slept on the pillow my grandma used. And she would frequently twitch like someone possessed her, and her eyes would roll back and then lose all energy after. It wasn't until we burned the pillow that she returned to normal. I remember myself that I slept for 24 hours after seeing her getting cremated, and I was 7 at the time. She also told me that my grandma has seen weird things like an elderly woman suddenly crawling up a wall with bare hands. I am not usually one who believes in it, but my mom clearly thinks otherwise. When I was in Thailand, I also heard knocking from the closet at night around 1 a.m., and I didn't think much of it, and it only happened on one night at her current residence. And when I told them, they told me not to joke and it might be a termite. So I just told myself that's what it was. What do y'all think about this spooky stuff? This happened a few years ago, and it still messes with me. I was over at my neighbor's one summer night. She is an older gypsy woman who everyone on the street likes. Real sweet, always bringing over food or just sitting and talking. A couple of us were chilling in her kitchen, drinking tea and swapping stories. It was one of those slow evenings where nothing happens until we heard music, not from a phone or a radio. It sounded live, drums, a violin, people singing, distant but close enough to make the hairs on my arms stand up. My neighbor went quiet for a second, looked at the door and said, "Don't go out." I thought she was being dramatic. I was wrong. We looked toward the backyard. There's this open lot behind her house, nothing there usually. In the moonlight there was a low haze, like mist, and in that haze were figures moving. At first I thought it was kids playing a prank. Then I realized they weren't quite right, semi-transparent, like smoke shaped into people. Some of them looked like they were missing limbs, others just floated slightly above the ground. One looked like it had no head, but it still kind of swayed to the beat. In the center were 2 more solid-looking silhouettes, a man in a suit and a woman in a white dress, standing like a couple. The rest circled them, keeping time with the music. They didn't look angry, just there. The whole scene felt wrong and calm at the same time. My neighbor murmured, "It's their wedding again." She told us to stay inside, that they wouldn't come into the house while she had people there. I remember thinking, okay, whatever that means, she's seen weird stuff before. That made it sound ordinary, which is the weirdest part. 2 of the people with us didn't buy it. One of them laughed and said it is probably someone messing around with speakers. The other said he wanted to go check it out. My neighbor begged them not to. "Please don't," she said, voice shaking. They shrugged and left anyway. We watched from the window. They crossed the yard. The music sort of stopped for a beat. Then the figures all turned and drifted toward them. The fog closed around those 2 for a second, just a second, and when it cleared they were gone. No screams, no fight, nothing. One moment they were there, the next they just weren't. We ran out, no footprints, no sign. The police did searches, nothing turned up. It's been years, no trace. My neighbor still lives there and says sometimes, on certain nights, she hears the drums again. She says if she looks out, she sees more faces in the circle, new ones. She says she's seen my friends there, smiling like they always do in photos. I don't know what happened. Spirits, hallucination, or something else. All I know is that after that night, I stopped being the kind of person who thinks ghost stories are just stories. If you ever hear distant music at night, and there is a fog hanging low, don't be clever. Stay inside. My dad worked the graveyard shift literally. He was the overnight caretaker at an old cemetery out in East Chattanooga, past where the asphalt ends and the trees start to swallow the road. The kind of place where even the moonlight feels thin. His job sounded simple enough. Keep the homeless from sleeping on the graves, make sure no one broke into steel copper vases, keep the grounds respectable. I only went with him once when I was 9. He told me to sleep in the guard shack while he made his rounds. The shack was small and smelled like burnt coffee and damp wood. There was a little heater in the corner that hissed more than it warmed. I remember curling up under his old jacket, the smell of cigarettes and aftershave still clinging to it, and falling asleep to that soft hum. The first time I woke up, the heater was dead quiet. The night felt heavy too still. And then I heard it. That whistle. Dad's whistle was sharp, piercing the kind of sound that could cut through wind, rain, or trouble. It was the same whistle he used to call me in from playing outside. But hearing it out there, in the middle of a silent graveyard, made my heart stop. He was somewhere beyond the window, out near the older headstones where the fog sat thickest. I rubbed the glass clear with my sleeve just in time to catch the glint of his flashlight. He was standing completely still. The beam of light moved slow, sweeping from grave to grave, then lifted higher, like he was looking at something that shouldn't have been standing there. The whistle came again, lower this time, drawn out, trembling at the end. "Daddy," I whispered. He didn't answer. Then, just like that, the flashlight blinked out. When I woke again, it was dawn. The heater was sputtering, and his flashlight lay on the desk beside me, still slick with dew. My dad sat slumped in the corner, eyes red and far away. He didn't say much on the ride home. Every few miles, he'd purse his lips like he meant to whistle again, but stopped himself each time. Years later, after he passed, I found one of his old notebooks in a box of his things. Most of it was ordinary dates, weather notes, names, but a few pages looked rushed. Heard whispering near the east fence again. Thought it was wind. It wasn't. Something by the trees tonight. Whistled, it whistled back. Little girl near section C, barefoot. Vanished when light hit her. The last entry was dated the night I went with him. Toe jams with me tonight. Can't let her see what's moving out there by the tree line. If it whistles again, I'm not answering. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I hear it, that same sharp whistle, distant and hollow, drifting through the night air. And for just a moment, I can smell that East Chattanooga fog again, damp, cold, full of something that never wanted to be disturbed. Then I think of my dad, standing alone between the graves, goosebumps rising on his arms, flashlight trembling in his hand, and I can almost hear him whisper, "Not tonight. Not while she's here." I will tell you what happened to me working as a security guard in a morgue. I work as a security guard in a morgue. My shift is night, from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., and each shift is covered by a single security guard. I am in charge of controlling the entry of corpses, receiving family members to enter and identify them, recording their data, and of course, maintaining the security of the facility. The entrance to the building is about 20 meters from the security booth, and for some time now the door has been closed at 11 p.m., once all the doctors leave. One afternoon an ambulance brought a death. The boys who gave the details of the deceased were very faint, sweaty and dizzy. The driver couldn't stop sobbing, and he felt very tired, something that almost never happens. I asked him if they were okay, and if they needed anything, and they answered no, that they just wanted to deliver that lifeless body and go home. So we continued with the protocol without giving it importance, and continued with the work. I wrote down the victim's information. The diagnosis was brutal. strangulation followed by impalement, found in a nearby lagoon. When I checked the cameras, I saw what they were carrying: a corpse in an advanced state of decomposition, with the skull exposed, the skin loose, maggots everywhere, and the stick that had gone through it horribly, from the anus to the shoulder, was still there. I contained my disgust as best I could and continued with the protocol. Around 10 p.m., I began to notice a foul smell coming from the grate outside the guard room. This smell usually comes out on summer days because the water passes through there when they wash the body for the autopsy. I sprayed air freshener and closed the window a little, but the stench persisted. Through the cameras, I saw white smoke coming out of that grate for about 10 seconds. I didn't think anything about it. I didn't want to. But as soon as I closed the front door, the door to my on-call room slammed violently behind me. I was frozen. I tried to convince myself it was the wind, but something told me it wasn't. When I got back, my phone died so quickly it seemed quite strange. So I decided to play on my laptop. It took 20 minutes to boot up, which I also found strange. So I just stared at the cameras out of boredom. I instantly regretted it. One of the trays inside the burial chamber moved on its own, sliding deeper into the chamber, where there was no longer access for security cameras or outsiders. I was stunned. Minutes later, the knocking on the door began. Dry and insistent blows. My heart was beating wildly. I turned off the cameras, turned on music, and forced myself to ignore everything until someone knocked on the window. I didn't know whether to pray or scream. At 4:15, the door to the guardhouse opened by itself. I went out trembling to close it, but my movements were clumsy, slow, as if something invisible was holding me back. The smell of rotting meat was unbearable. I felt watched. We have a rosary and a cross with the Virgin Mary in the guard room, so my only thought was to close my eyes, cross myself, and pray. Then I remembered that prayer to the Virgin Mary is often used when performing exorcisms. When I began to ask him to stop everything that was happening, my body was shaking from the cold. The window slammed shut again, and the smell began to fade, finally until I looked at the time, and it was already 5 a.m. I had to reopen the door to let the workers in. From that night on, every time I enter that place, I pray, and when I'm gone, so am I. I had never felt a presence so dense and dark. That change was the only time I truly believed that something other than a human was watching me. I'll make a shorter story from a longer one involving sensitive auras, but once I was with a girl on Big Frog Mountain at dusk, miles away from anyone. We decided to walk up a trail when right behind the car, I stepped in a mud puddle with odd-looking light brownish water. I pointed the unusual color to her, then we started walking. Not far up the trail, she started getting scared, and we went back to the car. In the car, we started making out while lying in the front seat, and she had her hand draped out the window. I felt an odd sensation in my back. It had happened before when people were behind me, and told her to pull her hand in, which she did. A few minutes later, I felt the sensation in my back again, but it felt more urgent. I rolled her window up, but being a horny-ass teenager, continued with the make-out session. A few minutes later, it felt like someone had stuck a live wire to my back. I sat up, started the car, and headed back down the mountain. She was obviously confused and asked me what was wrong. I replied that I didn't know, but something was wrong somewhere. We went back to my parents' house, and was assured by them the family was okay. Having calmed down some, we ate a little dinner, then started to leave. After I opened the car door for her, I walked around the back of the car. While walking, I glanced at the back of the car and saw handprints the same color of the mysterious mud puddle on the car. The last one was over the back window, and it was obvious someone was watching us while inching their way to the front driver's side window. When I saw the handprints, it was like being hit with a lightning bolt, and I knew what had happened. Cold chills ran all over me. I got her out of the car, and as soon as she saw the prints, she knew too. This story is the absolute truth, so help me, and I will never forget it.